Let me tell you something most people applying to law school have no idea about. 2026 is not going to be a normal cycle. And it's not because schools are reducing their class sizes or because the average applicant suddenly got smarter, but it's because everything else around the admissions process is changing at the same time. We're seeing federal loan options disappearing, LSAT scores quietly inflating, a massive spike in LSAT test takers, and way more competition for scholarships. So if you're applying in 2026 and you don't adjust to these changes, you're going to get left behind, plain and simple. You cannot afford to play the game the way it worked 5 years ago. You've got to adapt to the way the game works now. Now, I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005. That means I've seen every trend in law school admissions. The score drops, the pandemic boom, the scholarship cutbacks, the test format changes and the rise of test optional rumors, the comeback of in-person exams, you name it. Every year people ask me, is this the year things get easier? No, this is the year things get smarter. The people who win in 2026 will be the ones who know what's changing before everyone else does and adjust accordingly. Let's start with the biggest change that almost nobody's talking about. The federal government is phasing out Grad Plus loans. This is the loan program that's been plugging the gap for law students for decades. For years, law students had a simple playbook for paying for school. You take out federal Stafford loans for the first portion of your tuition, usually around $20,500 a year. Then you fill in the rest with Grad Plus loans, which were the federal loans that covered everything else, remaining tuition, living expenses, fees, even a new laptop. You didn't need a cosigner. You didn't need amazing credit. And you got access to benefits like income-driven repayment, public service loan forgiveness, and generous deferment options. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. It gave students flexibility and breathing room. But that system is going away. The Trump administration has signed the big, beautiful bill to phase out Grad Plus loans. You're still going to get Stafford loans, but they won't be enough to cover a $60,000 up to $100,000 a year law school bill. So now you have 3 options. Option 1 is take out private loans. But the problem is, private loans are a whole different ballgame. The interest rates are higher, sometimes 10% or more. The repayment terms are stricter, no income-based repayment, no public service loan forgiveness. And if you hit hard times, you're on your own, no deferment, no forbearance. Private lenders also base approval on your credit score and income. And guess what most law students don't have before school? High income or excellent credit. You might need a cosigner. You might not even get approved at all. And even if you do, the debt load can quickly spiral out of control. Your second option is to get family support. And if you've got parents or relatives willing and able to help, that's great. But to be honest, most students don't have that option. Many applicants are the first in their family to go to grad school, or they're coming from middle or working class backgrounds where 6-figure tuition just isn't something their family can cover. So your third option is to win scholarships, and that is the best path. It's the most stable, and it's also the most competitive. And the number one factor schools use to decide who gets merit scholarships is your LSAT score. That's it. Not your essays, not your volunteer work, not your GPA from 5 years ago. It's a single 3-digit number. Let's say you and another applicant both have solid applications, but you score a 164 and they score a 170. They're going to get a $50,000 scholarship and you might get nothing. And law schools aren't shy about this. They need high LSAT scores to boost their rankings, so they reward those scores with money. If you want a scholarship, especially now that Grad Plus is disappearing, you've got to become the person they want to pay to attend. And that means treating the LSAT not as a test, but as a financial strategy. If you raise your score by just 5 points, that could be the difference between paying full price versus getting half off, going into $200,000 in debt versus $80,000 in debt, or choosing between your dream school and a safety school. That is why the smartest applicants in 2026 are putting serious focus on their LSAT prep now, because they know that without Grad Plus loans to fall back on, the best money is merit money. And merit money flows to the people with the highest LSAT scores, period. Now, the next big indication that 2026 is going to be different is that the number of August LSAT registrants is doubled year over year. For the August 2025 LSAT, over 34,000 people registered. To put that in perspective, last August only had 16,000 registrants. That means we're looking at a 112% year-over-year increase. That's a number so big, it almost looks like a typo, but it's real. And even if we apply the usual melt rate, where 10 to 20% of people don't show up on test day, we're still left with more than 27,000 actual test takers conservatively. That would make it one of the largest LSAT administrations in the last 15 years. And that's not just because of pandemic-related deferrals or a one-off spike. Those are the explanations people throw around when they want to downplay what's happening. And it's also not just more people taking the LSAT, it's more people entering the funnel with a real plan to apply. They're not dabbling, they're trying to break into law school during a time of economic uncertainty, and they're serious about it. And let's break down why that matters. More test takers means more score reports. Even if a third of them canceled, that still leaves a large pool of valid competitive LSAT scores entering the admissions cycle. And more scores means more competition at key thresholds. A few years ago, a 168 might have put you near the 75th percentile at many top schools. Now, it might just barely get you to the median. And more applicants means more early score cutoffs. When schools are flooded with strong applications early in the cycle, they get pickier because they don't have to take risks on borderline applicants. They can afford to wait. So if you're planning to test in October or November, you're already up against a wave of early bird applicants who are going to have their LSAT scores ready, they're going to send in their applications before you, and they'll get first dibs on merit aid and admission spots. And law schools love early applicants. They fill a big chunk of their incoming class with people who apply early, often before the October scores even come out. So by the time you're submitting in November or December, you're not just applying late, you're applying for fewer seats, less money, and against people with inflated scores. Now let me give you a historical example. In 2021, early LSAT registrations spiked. Everybody was still in the pandemic mindset, thinking, I've got time to study, or let me try an earlier test. The result was total applicants surged by 13%. Medians at top 20 law schools jumped 2 to 3 points in a single cycle. And people with scores that would have been automatic admits the year before were suddenly stuck on waitlists. Schools, of course, loved those bigger pools of applicants. They got more selective, and they kept the higher standards going. Now in 2026, we're seeing signs of another wave. Now, let's say you're planning to test in October or November. You're doing it because you want more study time, which makes sense, right? But here's the problem. You're not just giving yourself more time, you're also giving everyone else more time to score higher and submit early. By the time your score comes in, law schools will already have seen thousands of applicants. You're walking into the party after the good food's already gone. They'll still consider you, but now you're competing with people who scored in the 170s and applied in September, people who already locked in scholarships, and people who got in early and snapped up limited seats. In other words, your margin for error shrinks. So if you want to stay ahead of the wave, here's the move. If you can, test earlier, ideally in August or September. That is prime time, not just for timing itself, but for beating the competition. Secondly, you want to retest smart. If you don't hit your goal in August or September, you've still got October or November as backup, which gives you multiple shots before most people even apply once. And finally, plan backward. Start your LSAT prep now if you haven't already. Don't wait till later to cram. Give yourself the time to do it right. This is not just about avoiding mistakes. It's about stacking advantages. You want to be the person who already has a 170 plus LSAT in hand, apps polished, and scholarships rolling in, while everyone else is still Googling how to sign up for the November LSAT. Now let's talk about a trend almost nobody's acknowledging, but is already changing how admissions works behind the scenes. LSAT score inflation. And no, I don't mean the test got easier. I mean the distribution of scores is slowly creeping upward without most applicants realizing it. Let's break it down step by step. What is causing the inflation? The biggest factor is something that sounds fair on the surface and in many ways is fair. It's called accommodations. When you qualify for accommodations on the LSAT, you might get 50% extra time, more frequent breaks, and a quiet testing environment. These changes are crucial for students with learning disabilities, ADHD, anxiety disorders, or other medical conditions. The intent is to create a level playing field. So far, so good. But there's a catch. Students who test with extra time tend to score significantly higher. And this is backed by research. When you give someone 53 minutes for logical reasoning instead of 35 minutes, that is a massive advantage. It means they can double-check answers, slow down on hard questions, and avoid silly mistakes. And their scores go up, not by a little, but by a lot. And there's no asterisk on the score report, no special category, no note that this student took it with extra time. And law schools receive your score just like everyone else's. Just the number, that's it. So admissions officers see one applicant with a 170 who has standard timing and another who got a 170 with 50% extra time. Both look equally strong on paper, but the path to that score might have been very different. Now multiply that by thousands of applicants. In recent years, more and more test takers have applied for and received accommodations, which means a growing portion of high scores are coming from extended time testing. And that pushes the percentiles down and the medians up. It used to be that scoring a 173 put you in the 99th percentile. Now, you've got to get a 175 to be in the 99th percentile. In other words, it's become harder to score in the top 1%. Now, that might not sound like a big deal until you realize what it means for your chances of admission and getting scholarships. Now, let's say you're taking the LSAT under standard conditions. No extra time, no longer breaks. You're working with the original 35-minute time limit per section. That means you're playing the game on hard mode, while some of your competitors are on normal or even easy mode. Again, this is not about fairness or fairness debates. This is about understanding your playing field and adjusting your strategy accordingly. Because if you're not getting those built-in time advantages, then you've got to outperform, not just match. A 170 might have been good enough a few years ago. Not anymore. Now, to stand out at top schools, especially if you want scholarships, you've got to be hitting a given school's 75th percentile or higher. That's usually going to be 173 at T14 schools and 175 plus at the top 3 or top 6 schools. And remember, law schools care about numbers. If 10 people apply with 170s and you've got a 173, you rise to the top of the pile. They don't care how you got it, they just care that you did. So, how do you compete? Here's what smart applicants are doing. First, you've got to master pacing early. If you're testing under standard timing, train under standard timing. Not with breaks, not with checking your phone, simulate real test conditions. Secondly, don't settle for the median. The average applicant aims for the school's median LSAT, but you've got to aim for their 75th. That's how you get noticed and get money. Third, use your time like gold. You can't afford to waste 2 minutes on a question you should have skipped. So you need a plan for when to guess, when to flag, and when to move on. Finally, be relentless about review. Every question you miss is a gift. Break it down, understand why you missed it, learn the pattern, so you can fix it for next time. The LSAT is a game of precision. Score inflation means the curve is shifting. So if you want to stay ahead, you've got to shift with it. Now let's get brutally honest for a second. Most law school applicants think a weak LSAT score just means they won't get into a top school. That may be true, but it's only half the problem. The real problem is that a weak LSAT score can destroy your financial future, even if you still get into law school. Let's walk through exactly how this works. Imagine a scenario where you get in, but you get no aid. You apply to a private law school. The tuition is $65,000 a year. You add in living expenses, books, fees, bar prep, and it's not unusual for the total cost of attendance to hit $250,000 to $300,000 over 3 years. You score a 158 on the LSAT, you get in, and you're thrilled. But then the financial aid package comes in and you get zero. No merit aid, no scholarships, no grants. Why? Because your LSAT score wasn't high enough to boost the school's ranking, so they had no incentive to throw money at you. So you take out loans. Big ones. Maybe they're private loans now since Grad Plus is disappearing. You graduate 3 years later with $280,000 in debt. You land a public interest job paying only $65,000 a year. And now You're making minimum payments that barely touch the principal. You defer when you can. You feel the pressure every time the rent's due. You push off having a family and you delay buying a home. Yes, you're technically a lawyer, but you're financially stuck for the next 20 years. Now let's flip this scenario. You take the LSAT seriously. You prep early. You raise your score to a 173. Same school, same sticker price tuition. But this time, you get a $35,000 a year scholarship. That's $105,000 off the top. That means your total cost of attendance drops to $170,000. So, you take out fewer loans. You keep your monthly payments under control. You have options, maybe even clerk, work in a nonprofit for a few years, or start your own practice. All because of a score on one standardized test. Let's say you get a 160 and you take out $250,000 in loans. At 7% interest, your monthly payment on a 10-year plan is around $2,900 per month. Now, compare that to scoring a 170, getting $100,000 in merit aid, and borrowing only $150,000. Your monthly payment drops down to only $1,750 per month. That is a $1,150 per month difference every single month for 10 years. That's not just a number. That's getting your first apartment versus still living with roommates. That's being able to save, invest, or travel versus barely scraping by. That's living a life of freedom versus financial fear. And remember, this is not about being rich. It's about being strategic. Because while most people are worried about getting in, you'll be making choices based on value. Now, your LSAT score, seen this way, is a financial lever. And you've probably never thought about the LSAT this way before. Not a test, not a gatekeeper, but a lever. The kind of lever that, when pulled hard enough, can save you over $100,000, change your law school options, and give you breathing room that most of your classmates will never have. And the best part is, it's the one part of your application that is still in your control. You can't go back in time and raise your GPA. You can't change where you went to college, but you can spend 3 to 6 months getting laser focused on a score that moves the needle. And in July 2026, when the Grad Plus loans are gone and the scholarships are more competitive than ever, that LSAT score becomes the most valuable asset you've got. Now, let's cut through the noise. There are two kinds of law school applicants in every cycle. The first kind thinks they're being responsible by applying early, prepping hard, and chasing scholarships. The second kind thinks they'll figure it out later. Guess which group ends up with money in the bank, multiple offers and choices? And guess which group ends up on Reddit asking if they can renegotiate scholarships after they've already committed? If you're serious about law school in 2026 and serious about not drowning in debt, here's what the smartest applicants are already doing right now. First and foremost, they are starting their LSAT prep earlier than everyone else. Most people treat LSAT prep like cramming for a college midterm. They start 6 to 8 weeks out, think they'll just review the basics, and then panic when they plateau in the 150s. Smart applicants know the LSAT is the single highest ROI part of their application, so they give it 3 to 6 months minimum. They start now so they can take the August or September LSATs when seats are open and stress is lower. They retake in October or November if they need to, and still apply early in the cycle, and they lock in the score before the chaos of the admissions season begins. They are not reacting to deadlines. They are planning backwards from those deadlines. Secondly, they are treating the school's 75th percentile like the new median. If your LSAT score isn't above the school's median, you're playing uphill. Your app might get read by someone looking for a reason to say no. You're unlikely to get significant merit aid if you get any at all, and you're more likely to get waitlisted or being asked to explain yourself. Smart applicants don't aim for the 50th percentile. They aim for the 75th. That's the number that gets you attention, not just acceptance. It puts you in the category of people who improve the school's rankings. And that's the kind of leverage schools will pay you for. You've also got to get real about law school finances now, not later. But here's what average applicants do. They apply to 12 different schools, get into 4 of them, pick the best name brand, and take whatever loan package they've been offered. Then, they spend the next 10 years paying for that one rushed bad decision. But smart applicants do the math before they apply. They ask, What's my target scholarship amount? What LSAT score will get me that? Which schools reward high scores the most? And can I graduate with under $100,000 in debt? They reverse engineer a financial outcome, not just an emotional decision. They know that top school doesn't mean much if it leaves them broke and burned out. Here's one of the most common mistakes I see. Students take 10 untimed practice tests, then 5 kinda timed tests. Then they're shocked when their official score drops 8 points from their best practice test. Why? Because they never practiced under real test pressure. But smart applicants simulate the real test always. 35-minute timed sections. No pauses, no music, no snacking between questions, no stopping to check your phone. They sit down and train like it's game day. Because when it is game day, they're ready, and everyone else is freaking out because the testing software doesn't look like Khan Academy. That's what makes the difference between a 167 and a 172. Different stress response. Now, average applicants hope law schools will see potential. But smart applicants know how law schools respond to incentives. That means a high LSAT score equals better scholarship offers. Early applications equal higher acceptance rates. And precise, polished materials mean faster reads and making a better impression. This is why the smartest applicants treat law school admissions like a negotiation, not a lottery. They're not begging to be picked, they're choosing where they want to go, how much they want to pay, and what they want to get out of it, because they're showing up with real leverage and real preparation behind it. Now, if you've been paying attention to the trends for 2026, here's what you already know. Law school is getting more expensive. Grad Plus loans are on the way out, and private loans are taking their place. And that means you, the student, will carry more financial risk than ever before. At the same time, competition is going up. LSAT registrations are surging again. That means more applicants, more pressure, higher medians, and more people fighting for the same limited seats and scholarships. And the rules of the game are changing. Accommodations are inflating scores, and schools are not adjusting for it. If you're testing under standard timing, you're being measured on a curve that isn't designed for you. And that means you need to hit even higher numbers to stand out. So now ask yourself, what kind of applicant do you want to be? Because there are only 2 choices. Option 1, you do what everyone else does and you ignore all of this. You start studying 2 months before your test date. You take 1 or 2 practice tests, feel okay about them, and register anyway. You apply in December because you ran out of time to polish your essays. You apply with a score that's good, but not great. It's a 160 or maybe a 165, just below the school's median, and you hope they'll see your GPA or your story and cut you some slack. Maybe you get in, but with little or no scholarships. So you borrow $250,000, graduate in debt, and hope your salary makes up for it. For most people, this is what law school looks like, a high-risk bet with no margin for error. But option 2, you treat this like a high-stakes, high-leverage opportunity that it is. You start early, and you plan backwards. You give yourself the time to retake the LSAT if you need to, and you aim for the school's 75th percentile, not their median, and you practice like it's real. You don't chase the prestige school just because it sounds good. You look at value, meaning net cost, ROI, and career outcomes. You apply with leverage, not desperation. And here's the kicker. That second approach, it doesn't even take more talent or more money or some special advantage. It just takes being willing to plan ahead and act with intention. Now, most 2026 applicants won't see any of this coming. They're going to prep too late, they'll aim too low, they'll borrow too much, and they'll spend the next 10 years wishing they had done it differently. But that doesn't have to be you. You've already done the hardest part. You're aware. You know what's happening. You know where the pitfalls are, and now you know how to prepare for them. You can still change your trajectory. You can still raise your LSAT score. You can still position yourself for top schools and major scholarships. But you've got to start now. Not next month, not after you get everything else in order, right now. Because this isn't just about getting in. It's about how you get in and what kind of life you set yourself up for later.